The 70s was chock full of great horror, but you won't find The Exorcist or Alien in this list. Those legends never left the spotlight. Let's try to remember the others. The films we first saw in childhood or our teen years. The ones that scared us just as much and made us sleep with the lights on for weeks, but that are talked about far less today. Long before Mulder and Scully, there was Carl Kolchak, a grumpy Vegas reporter who stumbles onto something the cops refuse to believe: a vampire stalking the streets of Sin City. This made-for-TV movie delivers its horror with a straight face, placing the impossible right in the middle of the everyday. Hookers vanish, bodies pile up, and Kolchak's hunt for the truth gets him laughed at, shut down, and nearly killed. But he won't stop. It was such a hit it got a sequel and even a full series, but nothing tops the original. A smart, strange thriller that turned TV horror into something worth losing sleep over. Also known as Don't Open the Window, this Spanish-Italian cult gem takes the slow dread of Night of the Living Dead and drops it into the misty hills of rural England. A road trip detour leads two strangers into a nightmare of dead men walking, not because of voodoo or viruses, but because of a government experiment with radiation waves meant to kill insects. The result? The dead don't stay dead. It's grim, grounded, and genuinely unnerving, with moments that feel way more intense than most big-name zombie flicks. Directed by Dan Curtis and based on stories by I Am Legend's Richard Matheson, Trilogy of Terror features 3 twisted tales, all starring Karen Black in different, equally doomed roles. There's a woman stalked by a manipulative student, a tense story of 2 bitter twin sisters, and most famously, a one-woman battle against a Zuni fetish doll that springs to life and attacks her in her apartment. The final segment, Amelia, became an instant cult favorite, and one of the most iconic killer doll stories ever put on screen. Made for TV, Trilogy of Terror proves you don't need a big budget to leave a lasting impression. The Rolfe family rents a remote mansion for the summer. It seems like a peaceful escape, except for one strange condition. An unseen elderly woman lives behind a locked door upstairs, and they must never disturb her. As the days pass, the house begins to affect them. Subtle at first, then more violent. Personalities shift, tensions rise. Something in the house, or the house itself, seems to be taking hold. Burnt Offerings trades blood for atmosphere, and it works. It gets under your skin and stays there long after the lights go out. A series of random murders hits New York City. The killers are different, but all say the same thing: God told me to. Detective Peter Nicholas begins to suspect the cases are connected. His investigation leads him to a mysterious figure named Bernard Phillips and a disturbing web of religious fanaticism and conspiracy. Directed by Larry Cohen, God Told Me to blends crime thriller, sci-fi, and psychological horror. Made on a low budget, it uses its independence to tell a raw, aggressive story that sticks with you long after it ends. This Brian De Palma horror thriller is a few steps above your average genre film. Stylish, unsettling, and expertly crafted. It's well regarded but little watched and deserves more attention. A father searches for his kidnapped son, taken by a secret government group trying to weaponize psychic powers. As the experiments continue, the boy grows unstable, while a teenage girl with telekinesis begins to sense his pain through a mysterious link. Before Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees, or Michael Myers, there was the Tall Man, an interdimensional undertaker with a flying silver sphere and a terrifying plan. Don Coscarelli's Phantasm is one of the strangest horror films of the 70s, and that's exactly why it stands out. Made on a small budget, it never broke into the mainstream, but that may have preserved its surreal, dreamlike atmosphere. Characters shift locations without explanation. Rules don't always apply, and none of it needs to. The logic here is more nightmare than narrative. The sequels had their moments, but the original remains the purest version of Coscarelli's vision. It's flawed, yes, but also imaginative, unsettling, and unlike anything else of its time. David Cronenberg is known as a master of body horror, but some of his early films, like The Brood, are still overlooked. The story follows a man whose wife is undergoing an unusual form of therapy at a private institute. Her doctor, Hal Raglan, uses experimental methods that soon prove to have violent consequences, including a string of mysterious murders. The Brood explores the connection between mind and body, a theme Cronenberg would revisit throughout his career. Shot in his detached, clinical style and accompanied by an eerie score from Howard Shore, the film remains deeply unsettling decades later. Salem's Lot remains one of the most effective vampire films of the 70s. A writer returns to his childhood town and becomes fascinated with an old house on the outskirts. Soon after, children begin to disappear, and something unnatural is clearly happening behind closed doors. As suspicion spreads, it becomes clear that a vampire has taken hold of the town, turning the living into his servants. The real horror isn't in the violence. There's barely any blood, but in the slow creeping tension that builds with each scene.